Welcome to the Minute of Terror channel. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Comment where you are hearing this story from. My name is Joanna. I'm 24 years old, and this is the story of the longest night of my life. I just graduated from nursing school, full of dreams and nerves, ready to make a difference. My first job was at St. Mary's Hospital, a public facility on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio. The building was old, with corridors that smelled of antiseptic, and something else, something I couldn't quite place. The older wings, where I worked the night shift, had peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights. It was my third month, and I still felt like an outsider in that place. It was a Tuesday around 2 a.m. The night shift is always quiet, but that night the silence felt heavier, like the air was holding its breath. I was in the monitoring room, checking the vitals of patients in Ward 3B. Most of them were sedated, recovering from surgeries or in critical condition. Suddenly, the monitor for bed 12 went off. The heart rate of the patient, a 78-year-old man named Mr. Thompson, was racing at 120 beats per minute. That didn't make sense. He was under heavy sedation after heart surgery. I rushed to his room, my stethoscope bouncing around my neck. When I got there, Mr. Thompson was lying still, eyes closed, breathing heavily. The monitor kept beeping, but he looked unchanged, like nothing was wrong. I adjusted his sedative dose and checked the electrodes. Everything seemed fine, but his heart wouldn't slow down. That's when he muttered something, so faint I barely caught it. I leaned closer. "They walk at night," he said, his voice raspy, eyes still shut. A chill ran up my spine. I figured it was delirium, common in elderly patients on meds. I jotted it down in his chart and headed back to the monitoring room, trying to shake off the unease. But things only got worse. Around 3 a.m., other monitors started acting up. Bed 8, a woman in a coma, showed spikes in adrenaline. Bed 15, a young man in recovery, had blood pressure swings like he was in a panic. I ran from room to room, checking cables, rebooting machines, but nothing explained the readings. The hospital was silent except for the hum of equipment and the echo of my own footsteps. I was alone in the ward. My colleague, Ms. Linda, was in the ER wing, and the on-call doctor wouldn't show up until 5 a.m. Then I heard it, footsteps in the corridor. Not the soft soles we wear, but something heavier, dragging, like someone was limping. Ward 3BS hallway is long, with doors on both sides and a single exit to the elevator. I grabbed a flashlight from my pocket. The corridor lights were flickering again, and stepped out of the room. "Ms. Linda?" I called, my voice shaky. No answer. The footsteps stopped. I aimed the flashlight down the hall, seeing only empty space, the patient doors all closed. But for a split second, I swear I saw a shadow move at the far end, where the corridor turns. It was tall, shapeless, and gone before I could make sense of it. My heart was pounding, but I had to stay calm. I went back to the monitoring room, locking the door on instinct. I tried calling the front desk, but the internal phone just hissed with static. That's when Mr. Thompson's monitor went off again. This time he was awake. I ran to his room, and there he was, sitting up in bed, eyes wide, pointing at the door. "They're here," he whispered. "The ones who walk at night. They never leave." I asked who they were, but he just shook his head like he was too scared to say more. I didn't know what to do. My training told me to rationalize, but something was wrong with this hospital. I decided to check Mr. Thompson's chart for any history of dementia or hallucinations. As I flipped through the pages, I found an old note from another nurse, dated years back. Patient reports seeing figures in the corridor at night. Recommend psychiatric evaluation. My stomach churned. Other patients had seen things in this ward. By 4 a.m., the monitor stopped showing anomalies, like nothing had happened. But the hospital's silence felt more oppressive. I couldn't sit still. I grabbed a key to the records room in the basement, determined to figure out what was going on. The elevator took forever, and when the doors opened, the basement was dark except for a faint light at the end of the hall. The air down there was cold, damp, with a smell like wet earth. The records room was a maze of dusty boxes and folders. I started digging for anything about Ward 3B. After half an hour, I found a yellow document from 1962, when the hospital was built. The land, according to the report, used to be a municipal morgue, shut down after complaints of unusual activity. There were stories of staff quitting, talking about voices and shadows. The hospital was built anyway, and Ward 3B was right above what used to be the morgue chamber. As I read, I heard a noise behind me, a creak like one of the shelves had shifted. I switched off my flashlight on instinct, my heart in my throat. Something was moving in the dark, slow, dragging. It wasn't human. The silhouette was tall, with limbs that seemed too long. I froze, hiding behind a shelf as it passed by. The smell of wet earth grew stronger, and I heard a whisper, low, garbled, like multiple voices speaking at once. I don't know how I got out of there. I ran to the elevator. The doors closed behind me, and I made it back to Ward 3B. When I got there, Mr. Thompson was calm, sleeping like nothing had happened. The monitors were normal, but I knew what I'd seen. I spent the rest of the shift locked in the monitoring room, checking the cameras, which mysteriously showed nothing in the basement. The next morning, I told Ms. Linda everything. She stared at me for a long time before saying, "Girl, there are things in this hospital you're better off not messing with. Don't go back to the basement." She didn't explain further, and the other staff changed the subject when I brought up Ward 3B. I requested a transfer to the day shift the next week, but to this day, I can't sleep without checking my doors and windows. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear those dragging footsteps and smell wet earth. I don't know what the ones who walk at night are, but I know they're there in Ward 3B, waiting for the next person foolish enough to go to the basement.